Hi, I'm Ken. Today we're going to take a look at my Berlin collection. I must say that until recently, my Berlin collection was sparse. One might even say empty. A few weeks ago, I had done an episode where I put maybe a half dozen stamps into that album, into those pages. And one of the viewers of this channel, Henry from Michigan, reached out and said that he had some duplicates for two of the series I had put stamps into, and he'd love to send those my way. And then so I said, that sounds great. So Henry asked if there was anything else I was looking for. And in particular, I mentioned that I would love to have one of those Berlin Freedom Bell stamps, that I didn't have any of those, and I like them quite a lot. And so when the package arrived from Henry, I was really surprised by what he included. So let me first start out by saying thank you, Henry. I probably will wind up saying that a lot. Henry sent me a packet that had 5 pages. Let's see if these are on camera. Yeah, they are. 5 pages of stamps. I've got a bunch here on this card, on this page, another bunch. You'll see some regular issues there at the top. There's a backside to this page, transportation issues down here at the bottom, and some more safety issues at the top. I'll set this down. One more page here of stamps, but then this is the joy page. Well, they're all joy pages, but this is the page that he reached out for. So these first two series on this page are the stamps he said he would send along my way, and then along the bottom you may see that there are these bell stamps down here. So Henry sent along not just one example, but in fact the entire set of those bell stamps. So I'm just overjoyed with what Henry sent. Sorry, I knocked the mic. I'm just overjoyed with what Henry sent, and now that takes my Berlin collection, which was, mediocre, small, sparse, whatever the right word is, and turns it into a fairly reasonable collection. So let's dive in and take a look at it. This is my first page of Berlin stamps before Henry's package. These are all German stamps overprinted diagonally with Berlin in either black or red ink. After World War II ended in 1945, Germany was divided into 4 administrative zones, controlled by the US, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. These are those 4 zones. Notice that green dot in the middle of the Soviet zone. That's Berlin. Berlin was the former capital of the German Reich, and given its importance, it was also divided into 4 administrative zones. These are how those zones were laid out. What this means is that there was an island of French, British, and American zones of Berlin inside the larger sea of the Soviet zone of Germany, which would later become East Germany. This wasn't such a big problem in 1946 and 47. The administration was divided, but there was progress towards building a new stable German country. In 1946, this set of numeric stamps was released for use across most of Germany. These stamps were valid everywhere in Berlin, all 4 zones, no problem at all. Then in 1947, these stamps were replaced by this set. It was the same deal with these issues, valid in all 4 Berlin zones. But in 1948, tensions started to increase between the Soviets and the Western powers. There was a dispute about currency reforms across non-Soviet Germany, which the Western powers tried to push into Berlin. This became the catalyst in a growing Cold War for the Soviets to blockade the western portions of Berlin within the larger Soviet zone of Germany. The result turned into what became West and East Germany, with that little island of West Berlin sitting in the middle of Soviet-controlled East Germany. That West Berlin portion is what gets later referred to as Berlin in German stamp collecting. That brings us back to these stamps. These are the same stamps that were released across Germany in 1947, but overprinted with Berlin. Those overprints were applied to make the stamps left in the Soviet zones invalid. Indeed, the Soviets overprinted their stocks of the same stamps with this overprint. This overprint translates to Soviet occupation zone. The Soviets had also produced stamps specifically for their zone in Berlin. These stamps without the overprints had been valid across all the Berlin zones. These overprints were added after the blockade. I had a few of these Berlin overprinted stamps, and Henry sent me a few more. I'll be back in a moment with those tucked into the album. This is a big improvement. It made me add the extra mounts to the page. Notice the 2 different colored overprints. In particular, Henry sent me both the black and red overprint versions of the 5 Pfennig purple stamps and the 10 Pfennig green stamps. There were also surcharged versions of these overprints. I have 2 of these. Notice that the first is surcharged on one of the earlier numeric issues. The second one, and the two I don't have, were surcharged on the later worker and peace issues. These are the first regular issue stamps designed specifically for Berlin. They show well-known Berlin locations. This will be a theme going forward with Berlin stamps, showing areas of city pride. Of course, Berlin was the capital of pre-war Germany, so it was a place where important monuments and buildings had been located. After the war, West Germany moved the capital to Bonn on the other side of Germany from Berlin. East Germany kept their capital in East Berlin. When Germany reunited, the capital moved back to Berlin. I've been to a number of cities in Germany, but I've never been to Berlin. Henry tells me it's a wonderful city to visit. My daughter's been too, and she says it's the best city she's ever been to. Someday, I hope. When Henry reached out, he asked if there were any other stamps I had a priority of adding to my collection. I mentioned that I would love to have one of these stamps. These stamps show the Berlin Freedom Bell. This bell was a gift to West Berlin after the Soviets put up the blockade. This was both a symbol of support from the American people to the people of Berlin and an anti-communism message. Henry didn't just send me a sample, he sent me the whole set. This is my page now, and I'm overwhelmed that he sent all these to me. It's a beautiful set. So at first glance, these look like 3 copies of the same set. It's not. This set was issued 3 times. In 1951, the set came out with the bell clapper positioned to the left of the bell. Later that year and into 1952, the set was reissued with the clapper on the right side of the bell. And then in 1953, the set was issued for a third and final time, this time with the clapper in the middle of the bell. Another thing that wasn't so obvious until I had all these stamps in front of me was that the colors of the stamps changed with each of those releases. Scott and Michelle mentioned some of these color changes, but aren't clear about all the changes. Scott does give different names to all 3 of the 5 Pfennig stamps: chocolate, olive bistre, and brown. But for the 10 Pfennig stamps, it calls them deep green, yellow green, and then deep green again. Deep green might be the right word for the first and last green stamps, but they are still different colors. You couldn't see that without having the stamps in front of you. So I'm blessed to have them in front of me so I can see that difference. These stamps were also issued with 2 overprints. The first one commemorates Berlin's participation in the Greater Germany presidential election of 1954. The second one was a semi-postal issue with a 10 Pfennig surcharge for flood victims. In 1956, when this surcharge stamp was issued, Berlin was officially part of West Germany. That's why the bottom Deutsche Post was replaced with Deutsche Bundespost, Berlin. I've left space on my page for these 2 stamps, even though they aren't technically definitive stamps, because they round out the story of this page. Actually, it's not entirely clear to me that these stamps are regular issue stamps and not commemoratives. That definition is a little bit fuzzy. I usually look in the catalog for 2 things to tell me if a set is a regular issue or not. First, does the same design get used across multiple denominations? It does with this set, although many countries, including Berlin, issue commemoratives in multiple denomination patterns. Typically, that has 4 different denominations for each commemorative set. Berlin had a 3-denomination pattern during this period, and this set has 5 denominations, which is good enough for me. The second thing I look for is a note about why the stamp was issued. Usually the note says something like issued to commemorate, or issued in honor of, or sometimes issued on the anniversary of. These stamps don't have any of those notes. Anyway, I'm calling them regular issues. I might be wrong, but it doesn't matter. I love them just the same. Henry, you really made my day by sending along these stamps in this package. It was all the motivation I needed to get a deep dive into the history of these stamps. I really appreciate you sending them along. Thank you very much. Now let's get on with the rest of the Berlin collection. Here's another blank page in my collection. Not for long. There, it's just 1 stamp for now, but that's so much better than a blank page. There's a whole set of these stamps. These are them, in case you were wondering. I have the 15 Pfennig Rudolf Virchow stamp. Virchow was a physician known as the father of pathology. Henry, you'll be interested to know that he investigated the 1847 typhus epidemic in Upper Silesia, where your family is from. Here's another blank page. Let's fix that. There we go. This is another one of those pages of famous Berlin locations. I hate blank pages in my album. This is a page of stamps of famous Berliners. These are them. This is going to have to stay blank for now. As will this page of stamps featuring German President Hus. There were 5 of these stamps, and even though I don't have any of these yet, there is something really important going on with this set to talk about. Notice the words around the head, Deutsche Bundespost Berlin. That's as you'd expect. I mentioned with the Freedom Bell stamps that Berlin was part of the German postal system. All their stamps from this period say the same thing. But this is the first stamp with a companion stamp from the main part of Germany. The stamp on the left is the stamp from Berlin. The one on the right is the one from the rest of Germany. Notice the wording change, Deutsche Bundespost, no Berlin. From here forward, it's common for stamps to have both a regular version and a Berlin version of the stamp. The only difference being the format of the words and the addition of the word Berlin. I've messed this up a lot of times. I bet I have some Berlin stamps mixed in with my Germany collection somewhere. Be aware of this. Finally some stamps on my page. But Henry sent me a few more. The ones he sent me perfectly shuffled in with the ones I already had. Henry, did you do that on purpose? Be careful with these stamps too. They're also the Berlin version of a German stamp. And we come to the first page that caused Henry to reach out to me. This is another set of famous sites in Berlin. Henry sent me the whole set unused. There's one other stamp that I might try to get for this page. There is one more commemorative stamp that looks like these. This stamp was issued to commemorate the 725th anniversary of the borough of Spandau in Berlin. It came out 5 years before the rest of this set, but there's no doubt that they're in the same design family. Yeah, I think I need to add this stamp to this page too. This is another page with corresponding German stamps. Henry sent me the whole set of these too. I didn't even have the full set of these in my regular Germany collection. And this is the second page of stamps that Henry reached out to me about. Let's get those stamps put in. I've done something a little odd with this page. 4 of the designs are vertical format, the others are horizontal format. I've put all the vertical format stamps in the top row and the others on the next 2 rows. That's not the right denomination order for these stamps. That's an artifact of my choice to mount stamps in strips rather than individual mounts. Every choice has consequences, I guess. This doesn't bother me, but I thought I'd point it out. Here's another page of Berlin sites and another set of stamps with German counterparts. I've just got the 1 stamp here so far. That's fine. It gives me more to collect. Same thing on this page. I've just got the 2. There are Germany counterparts to this set as well. Although this page is empty, I'm very familiar with this set because I think it's one of the funniest sets in all of stamp collecting. I think maybe that makes me a little twisted. Henry sent me this whole set too. This set is the safety issue. It features various ways you could get hurt. Some are nicely stylized and reasonably tame, but look at the 10 Pfennig and someone falling off a ladder, and the 30 Pfennig with the guy about to get bonked by a brick. I can barely stand to look at that 50 Pfennig. I'm cringing as I see it even now. Yikes. This is kind of a hard set to get all the stamps for. Henry sent me most of them. I don't have all these technology issues for Germany proper yet either. I find with all countries that it's much harder to get modern stamps than older stamps, and that's fine by me. This set was released in 2 sets. Let's get the new ones added. You can see from this layout that some denominations were released in both sets. Note the 2 50 Pfennig stamps and the 2 60s. I've got my table at the bottom of the page to tell me when each set was released, but putting them together in denomination order rather than release order helps me see the patterns better. Another blank page, and I've got nothing to add either. This'll come eventually, I'm sure. In my Germany album, I have multiple pages for these stamps, but I'll only need the 1 for the Berlin versions. Berlin stopped issuing stamps in 1990, but the series continued in Germany for a number of years after that. The same thing is going on with this set as with the previous set. I have multiple pages for these in the Germany album, but one page will be enough for the Berlin page. And that's it for my Berlin regular issue stamps. But there are two other Berlin-oriented stamps that I want to share. After the war, but before the blockade, the Soviets released their set of Berlin stamps. That wasn't much of a statement, though. The Soviets issued stamps for each of the subregions they administered. France did the same thing for their subregions. These particular stamps feature a bear that is a mascot of the city. They came in both perforated and rouletted versions. There are a few other specialized versions of these stamps that I haven't decided to dive into yet. After the blockade, the Soviets overprinted these stamps too. I think it's safe to call these Berlin stamps too, although technically these are early East Germany stamps. And before I finish, I want to show you that I'm left with a pile still of commemorative stamps. These are all commemorative stamps on this sheet. This sheet. Here we go. And this sheet. And you know that I generally don't talk about commemorative stamps very often, but look at all these beautiful stamps. Now, I collect regular issues usually because I don't like trying to keep up with the flood of commemorative stamps that most countries started issuing around the 1980s. I'm not sure that that makes sense for a Berlin collection because Berlin is technically a dead country at this point. Berlin still exists, certainly within Germany, but it's not a stamp issuing entity anymore. It stopped issuing stamps in 1990 as part of German reunification. So I'm thinking it might make sense to fill out my Berlin collection with the commemorative issues too. I have all these nice stamps to start with, so why not? And with that, I'm done for today. I think I'll encourage you to go back and take a look at your Germany stamps and see if you have any stray Berlin stamps hiding in there anywhere. They are sneaky little guys. Anyway, happy collecting.